You're so very special. Now I wish I was special.
We're at the Permian Basin Fair, and this is episode 45 of Odessa After Dark.
What the hell am I doing? No, I don't belong here. Don't care if it hurts. I wanna have control. I want a perfect body, and I need a perfect soul.
On this episode, we'll look back at some of the cases we've covered over the last 5 years. I'll talk with Susan Rogers, and we'll start with the case of Jeannette Drzewiecki, who went missing 35 years ago this week from Odessa. I'm here with Susan Rogers of Odessa Crime Stoppers, and today we're going to speak about some of the cases that we have discussed over the last 5 years, and then tell you about some of the episodes that you can go back and see the information. And so this, as I said when I walked in here, this is our 6th year.
Wow.
I know. And so out of the cases we've done, 2 of them have been solved, and the other ones are still open. Back on June 4th in episodes 9, 10, and 13, we talked about Jeannette Drzewiecki. We talked to her husband, and we went through a timeline of the case based on the case that we got, a copy of some of it, and what we knew. And so on September 13th, 35 years ago, just downtown on Andrews Highway, at a place called the Dollhouse, she went missing. And her pickup truck was found a few days later, was taken to her husband, and he reported her missing. Now, the sad part about this is that her daughter was born just a number of days. Nicole was just born a number of days before she went missing. And so, after 35 years, I know a case gets difficult because every day sometimes seems like a case gets harder. So, after all these years, she would be 54, we'd be the same age. I mean, there's no one actively searching for her.
No, this is a cold case that we try to profile numerous times throughout the years because we know that someone out there knows what happened to Jeannette. They're still around. You know, they're in their early 50s, like she was. There's bound to be someone out there that knows what happened to her. You know, and it's one of those things that the family needs closure still. I'm sure they still think about it every day. I know that when talking to her daughter, that her daughter knows about her mother and knows the circumstances and the situation behind how she went missing. And we just encourage anybody that has information about her, even though this case is 35 years old, it's still an open case and it still needs to be solved.
Well, you did a report with the local NBC News here, and they ran her picture about 4 years ago. I saw that. Since we first talked about the case. Mm-hmm. And so there is interest. And you also talked to Jeanette's mother, who, when we did the case back in 2012, was still alive.
Yes.
And so there's, in any of these cases, there's active interest. There's active family members who are still pursuing what happened to their loved one. And so Jeannette, even though it's a long time ago, there's still people out there who
Oh, absolutely. She's got family members. She's got a daughter. She's got a husband who wants to know what happened. There's a lot of interest still there. And like I said, it is a cold case, but it's not a forgotten case.
Okay, so the next case we dealt with was in episode 14, dealing with Wendy Burdett. And 2 years ago, someone in that case was actually arrested, Thomas Ward Strickland Jr., and he is still in jail awaiting trial. And so with these, especially murder, and this case being that long, it's not unusual to go 2 or 3 years before there's an actual
Right.
trial.
And this is a perfect case to show you that this is why we like to continue to profile cold cases. That case was over 20 years old. We kept it in the news. The police department kept it in the news. You guys helped keep it in the news. We didn't let that go away. And with the diligence of the police department, they were able to bring that cold case to a close.
Yeah, because this was actually some real good police work that continued to interview the suspect and they continued to work it.
Right.
And so, I mean, we really have to give them props.
Oh yeah,
for
Odessa
this
Police
one.
Department did an excellent job on that. They stayed right on top of it, followed through with everything, and the result was an arrest was made, and hopefully there'll be a conviction.
Now, in episode 24, we talked about Annabelle Juarez, and she went missing on January 27th, 1997. She wasn't reported missing for a while. Her husband, Oscar Torres Juarez, told police that she had a boyfriend and that she had driven to Mexico to have an abortion. And so they actually hired a private detective. And I spoke to the private detective back in 2013 when we did this episode, and he was going to share his notes with us, but we never did receive them. So so some work has been done on the outside on this. She left 2 children behind, and we still we're looking now at 30 years on this one. Just a little over 30 years. Gosh, the time it just flies sometimes with these cases. And we don't know any more than what we did the last time we talked about her. But she actually, the husband's still alive. Her children are still living in the area. And so there's some real hope in this case that somebody could come forward.
Yeah, again, that's another one of those cases that, you know, she knew people. She was from Odessa. She had friends here. She had people that she talked to on a regular basis. So there is someone out there that knows exactly what happened to her. And again, it's one of those things that, you know, times change, lifestyles change, people change, and if you know something, it is still a cold case. It is one that family would like closure on, so if you have that information, we encourage you to come forward and speak with someone about it.
Well, back at the time her mother was still alive, her sister was still alive 4 years ago, and they lived in South Texas, and so we're talking about people who were still actively wanting to know and that are still around in this area. Unlike Jeannette, where they moved here from out of town, and then, you know, the husband eventually moved away.
Right.
With Juarez, all the family is
Still in the vicinity,
still in the area,
Yeah.
and so we really this is, if you go back to that episode, it's really a curious case, and so I hope that somebody will provide some information on this one. Then on episode 26, we covered the murder of Mary Kathleen Rodriguez, who was murdered on December 30th, 1990. And I think of all the cases, your husband worked this case, and we talked to Carl about it. I think this is the saddest because to die right between Christmas and New Year's Eve, and she, from what I remember, hadn't lived here very long, and she has no family here, and it's just a hard case.
It's a hard case because there wasn't family here, nobody to really get in contact with. Not that she didn't have family, and you know she does have family, and people want closure for that. But it was she wasn't from here. It was difficult, as I remember, for them to work that case because there wasn't a lot on that. But again, it's another one of those cases that we would love information on. You know, we laugh about it if there's, you know, more than one person involved. Typically, people can't keep their mouth closed, and so it was a big deal back in the day when that happened. There was a lot of media coverage on that, and we know people knew her. We know that. You know, again, somebody has to know what went on. You know, people talk about things, and where back in the day you might have heard somebody say something about it and you were afraid to say something then, you know, come forward and tell us now. Give us names that you had or anything that you heard back when this was in the media and in the news a lot, you know, and let us know what you were hearing. Through Crime Stoppers, you do that anonymously, so we don't even want to know who you are. We just want to get your information. And, you know, back in those days, you might have been afraid to come forward and say something. But it's completely safe to do that with us now, and that family deserves closure as well.
Well, and I mean, there's so many new technologies available to contact you. That you don't have to do just phone. You can email. You can do on the web. And you actually have a phone.
We have
app.
a secure app, where you can go on and do that. We take great measures to make sure. Our number one job is to make sure that our caller is not identified. That's what we're here for. And we take great measures to make sure that doesn't happen. We have a server completely in a different country where you can't it's tough enough getting stuff across state lines, but getting it from another country is a whole nother ballgame. So we go to great lengths to make sure we protect those callers. Odessa was a rough place back in those days, and it was hard for people to stand up and say something, where today it's not that way. We have a lot of people that are willing to get involved, whether they get involved personally or they get involved through Crime Stoppers. They're at least willing to call and give us that information. So we just want to make sure that people know that even though it's a cold case, even though it was 20 or 30 years ago, it's still a case. It's still there. There's the opportunity for you to let us know what happened.
Well, and the scary part, and we'll talk more about this in future episodes too, is that there's people out here who feel like they got away with murder.
Oh, absolutely.
They still probably live in the community, right. So your next door neighbor could have basically killed one of these people, or knows how one of these people went missing.
Whoever committed the crimes has gone on with their life. They're gone on with their life. They're 20 or 30 years older now. They've gone on with their lives. And that's one of the reasons shows like yours and us being able to keep it out there in the public, it keeps it in front of your face. It's not forgotten. We do remember it. You may think you've gotten away with it, but just as in the case where, in Wendy Burdett's case, I'm sure he went those 20 plus years thinking that he had gotten away with that all this time. I can't imagine that kind of thing on your shoulders and, living with that. But he, I'm sure he thought he got away with it, and we kept it out there in the public. The police department kept on top of everything that came in. That's just another one that goes to show you that those investigators work very diligently. I mean, if a tip comes in or if you give them a call on your own, they don't just blow that off. I mean, they work it. They make sure that they work it to a conclusion and do their job. They're very good at their job. Every once in a while we need a little help. We need some Crime Stopper tips to come in or whatever to lead them in the right direction, but they're going to take a look at every piece of information that comes in, regardless of how old the case is.
Well, in the next case that we talked about, kind of stumbled onto, was Teresa Wagoner, because of an autopsy. She wasn't on the autopsy actually. Foul play wasn't suspected. It said undetermined, and so she
kind of slipped through the cracks.
Yes. So her son is still speaks to you as far as what happened to his mom. She was found out on a dirt road, I believe, and she was dead. Yeah. And we don't know how she got there.
Right. Her body had been out there for a little while, and so it did come back as undetermined as her cause of death. There is reason to believe foul play was involved, and the investigators believe that. Right, and this was back in the 90s. This was back in the early 90s, and a lot of young people in those days were going to clubs, and they were making the club scene and doing things like that. And she had a lot of friends. I mean, she had a lot of friends. We know that. She went to a community or a community college type situation here. I guess it was a business college that she went to. So she had a lot of friends. She knew a lot of people. So for her to go missing and nobody to know absolutely nothing about that is really strange. But again, that's back in the day when, if you were young in that day and you were out partying and things, you might not have caught the news. We didn't have social media like we do today, and so people didn't get a lot of information about things that happened and people that went missing. And once her body was found, there was some media coverage over that. But it's a different day and time. Now we are able to get information out to the public, and law enforcement is able to get things solved a lot quicker because of social media. Back in the day, you had radio, television, and newspaper, and if you were a young 20 plus year old that was doing a lot of partying and out and doing that thing, you didn't take the newspaper and you didn't watch the news. So there were a lot of people that might not have even realized what happened to her and that there was foul play involved in her case. And we've tried to get that out there several times since we've found this. And just encourage people to think back to those days. Think back to February of 1992. That would have been in the days where there were a lot of bars and clubs in the 8th Street Grandview area over in there, and she frequented those with her friends. And you might have seen her on that last night that she disappeared. Would be a really nice case to be able to solve. Her son and her daughter both are still alive, and they were babies basically when their mother went missing.
Well, and then when we ran this the last time, you actually had some contacts from friends with her, but not any real. None of them gave you any tips as far as information.
Right. No, we didn't really get a lot, but it did get the community and the group of people that she ran with at the time to start talking again and remember, the things that went on. And that's what we want you to do. Think back about those days. If you would have been out with her on the nights when she would have been there, if you suspect that you know something. I mean, even the tiniest bit of information is at least a little information for law enforcement to look into.
Well, if she had some friends that they know about that weren't reported about, especially a boyfriend or somebody that she may have gone home with that week, or if she was acting suspicious in any way.
Or she could have met somebody. I mean, she could have met somebody out in one of these clubs, and if you were her friend and you were with her then, and y'all were having a good time, and she met somebody and she left, and you didn't suspect anything at the time, now's the time to step up to the plate. If if something sticks out in your mind that just wasn't quite right about what went on back then, I mean, it's still an open case. There's still time.
Well, and this one should be a little bit easier than some of the other ones because, as we both said, she had a lot of friends, and all these friends, from the last time I remember, most of them still live in the area.
They do.
And so there should be somebody with Teresa Wagoner that knows something and then can report in and let us send that over to the police department so they can continue to investigate.
Yeah. And one of the sad things, and one of the things that when you start dealing with these things as Crime Stoppers, we try to talk to family members and we talk to other people when we're trying to do our segments over the years. And Teresa, like I said, her son and her daughter are both still alive. And at the time that we started all of this, both of her parents were still with us. As a matter of fact, her parents raised her children. Very active in their lives, and it's my understanding that her father recently passed away, and it's really a sad thing not to be able to give someone closure in their lifetime. And we've gone through so many of these where siblings have passed away or parents have passed away that have been very adamant about trying to keep this alive and keep this case open and find out what happened. And so I really think that if you're a person out there who knows something about this case, I mean, you need to put yourself in the place of those parents or those brothers and sisters or that husband or that wife. Somebody knows something out there, and if it was me, I would want to know in my lifetime what happened to my loved one. And it's a thing that you need to sit down and think about in your mind and make a call.
Well, and one of those things too is we don't actively. And it's not our job to actively investigate what happened here. It's our job to see if somebody can share information, and so we can pass that information, or you can pass that information on to the police and let them do their work. Right. And so even though, like with Annabelle, there was a private detective working on that case, there's no. We don't have a private detective to work on this case. We only have the public.
Right.
And so we really need somebody to give us just some information so the police can do their job a little bit better. Okay, so the number is, once again, 333-TIPS. Or there's an app, or you can go on to, what's the...
The app is called P3 Tips.
P3 Tips.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And so is that for just Ector County, or is that for everybody?
It's a great app. When you first go on, it's going to have you set your hometown and everything in it. But the one thing we really love about the app, there are Crime Stopper programs all around the world. And so if you happen to be in North Carolina and witness something there, you can actually open up this app and scroll up to North Carolina and find out the city or the area you're in, and you can actually send a tip on through to somewhere else. So if you're on vacation or wherever you're at, if you witness something, I know, but you never know when that happens. So if you do, this is an excellent app to have on there. We also students are able to use this app and give us information about things that are happening on campus. And our young adults and our students and those kind of people are real into all that techie stuff, and so the app is excellent, and it's completely secure and safe. Won't identify you. There's no back door to it to go in and find out who you are, and it was developed and created by a man who has worked with Crime Stoppers for many, many, many years, and he knows and has a great love for Crime Stoppers and is not willing to risk the name of Crime Stoppers to do anything like
Wow.